Hello and welcome to another Rightly Witterings with me, Michael Jex, the tea drinking author who's actually got a very frothy cup of coffee today. Makes a nice change. Right. This is all the fault of one guy who sent me this a little while ago. Now, I am enormously grateful to all of you who keep sending me things. Some of you are nice people, like those very nice people at Visconti who sent me this. If you ever try to fill a pen from this, it is a little bit dodgy because the bottle wants to move. So just if you've got one of these, take a word from someone who's experienced it and put it upside down in there, because this is a much more stable base and it won't wobble and fall over. Okay. That was a quick comment. Lots of people have sent me stuff over the years. Delightful Chris sent me a load of different Rohrer und Klingner inks. I've had friends from all over the place sending me things like Hiroshizuku Takesumi. I've had someone sent me some Waterman's Black. I've had those very nice people at Diamine send me one of each of their blacks. So I've got some Onyx, I've got some Jet, I've got some, which is the other one? Quartz black too. I've got lots of blacks. I've got inks coming out of my ears. Even an old W.H. Smith's black ink from my father. But this has really got me going for the last few weeks. Last few videos, as you all know, have been about black ink and a certain amount of comparison. Now, the trouble is, I was looking through my notes and I saw that Visconti, in my notebook, only had a brief little line and I used the wrong pen. And I'm sure that lots of you will have noticed this because you're not stupid. But when you see my general reviews of inks, I use a nice big fat 1.1mm stub. But for some reason, the Visconti, I use something very different. So I thought, to hell with it. I will review all of the blacks again and go through the whole damn lot. Now, first of all, when I review inks, I've mentioned it before, I'll say it again, I use a TWSBI Go with a 1.1mm stub. I find it is ideal for really testing shading, testing sheening, testing the suitability of paper, just about every aspect of inks. That pen works really well. But I also always have used this lovely little Goulet pens, Cahier, which uses 52 GSM Tomo River paper and is fabulous. But I also thought that rather than just testing it on that, I would test it on cheap, rubbish paper, because then you can get an impression for how the inks work on cheap paper. But I've also got some fabulous expensive paper too. Now, the first thing to say is, if you're using cheap paper, you are going to have problems. What sort of problems? Well, you might get a certain amount of ink bleeding through and making a god-awful mess on your desk. Now this is, it has to be said, really, really cheap paper. I used it because I wanted to give an accurate representation of what these inks would look like in real life if you're using them in an office, because if you're using fountain pen inks in an office, you're probably going to want to have black or something else that is professional looking and nice. But you can tell looking at these that the paper is just awful. And I don't know why, every now and again when I just filled the TWSBI, it suddenly seemed to burp. Now I don't know if that's a factor to do with this paper or whether it's something to do with the TWSBI and the way that it works now, since I've taken it apart a few times, and just maybe I've not quite set the nib and the feed properly. It is possible that I've got that slightly wrong. So I will be looking at that very shortly. I'm also going to be cleaning it because I haven't cleaned that nib very well. Look at that. Ugh, what a mess. What I always do is I use this pen, I fill it with ink because it's nice and quick and easy to fill, and then after I've done my little writing samples, I wash it by running it under the tap for some minutes, flushing it as I go. Then I put it into a clean sink of water and flush it through again 5 or 6 times. And finally, I put it in a bucket of water, clean water, and flush it through again. So there should be no cross, what do you call it? Contamination of each of the inks when I'm testing them. Right, so let's have a look at the different colours. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to study these and I'm going to give you my impressions of the different inks. Now what I've discovered is, especially on, this is William Hanna 115 GSM paper, it is really solid, really robust. As you can see, there is no bleed through, no ghosting, nothing whatsoever. There is absolutely no feathering. It looks perfectly superb. But what did get me was when I was looking at the inks, the different qualities that you get from them. Now look at this. Hopefully this will show up with my camera. The Waterman ink is quite clearly a very deep brown to my eyes. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but when I look at it on this cream coloured Tomo River paper, it's slightly reddish, which comes across as brown when I look at it on plain white paper. W.H. Smith's permanent black was absolutely awful to try to use. Now, there are several possible reasons for that. One is, I think this bottle of ink may be 40 years old. It was my father's, and when he died, I snatched it up rather than see it go into a bin. But I suspect it's one of those pots that's been open for far too many years and the ink has dried out. Why do I say that? Well, when you look on here, you can see that there's railroading, or whatever you call it, rail tracking. It did not work happily on any of the papers I used. It worked okay on the Tomo River paper, as you would expect, but other ones, don't know. Now, getting down to the Cross and Rohrer und Klingner inks, I was fascinated to find that even in the bottle I could see a blue sort of overall tone to it. I don't know if you can see that in the very top. No, I probably can't. For me, looking with this against the light, I can see it looks blue. And then when I looked at the Cross black, that on the other hand has a reddish tinge to it. And I suppose if you're going to produce a black, you're going to have a lot of red and a lot of blue in them. And so whichever the proportions are, you'll get a different type of impact. But I think that when I look at the white paper, I can tell that the cross has a slight reddish tone to it. But I think it comes across even more clearly when you compare Rohre und Klingner, Leipziger Schwarz, and then compare that with cross. The Rohre und Klingner is very definitely a blue lying tinge. It's a deep dark blue, deep dark blue, whereas the cross is much more of a dark brown. Cross and Waterman are sort of similar, but cross is darker, is all I would say on that. And then I got to the one that is the cause of all of this bloody reviewing, which is Visconti. And I've made the comment there that this is another reddish style of black. Now I then went to a group of inks which I thought would be interesting, which are the diamines. So I've got diamine jet black, diamine quartz black and diamine onyx black. And if you look at these in sequence, you can see that I would say the jet black is more of a deep grey, the quartz black is a slightly darker grey, and then when you get to the onyx black, that's a true black. That is really, really dark. Until you then get to Lamy obsidian, which is here, yes, Lamy obsidian, because that is a really, really deep dark black with a blue tint again. I would say that the diamines seem to be much more genuine blacks. The jet black possibly is a bit more of a blue black, but the Lamy obsidian is really definitely a deep dark blue, which I found interesting, because I find all these things interesting because I'm a sad little devil. After that I went to Iroshizuku's Takesumi, and this slightly paler than the Lamy obsidian. It's a really nice, very, very dark black, but and the last ones I had are the two that I was really fascinated to test side by side, because I haven't before. First was Noodler's The Raven Evermore, and then I did Platinum's Carbon Black. Now the reason why these two interest me so much is because they are, I believe, I always believed, were two of the darkest, deepest, darkest blacks that you could possibly get. Both of them are not recommended to be left in pens for any long periods, because they won't just stain it, they may well gunk up your feed, especially Platinum Carbon, because it has got carbon in the ink, which is interesting. Why are these two so important to me? Well, they're the two that are supposed to be about the most waterproof inks on the planet. They're supposed to be bulletproof, and therefore they're ideal for watercolouring, so you can do a sketch of buildings or whatever you want and then wash over it with watercolour and the ink will remain. It won't dissolve into the watercolour solution. Now, I don't know again how accurate this camera is going to be representing it, but certainly to my eye, the Noodler's is very much a deep dark grey. The Carbon Black seems to be slightly darker. It does vary with the light, unfortunately. So here we have Cream Tomo River and plain white William Hanna. Let's swap them round so you can see it the other way. Now, it has to be said that it doesn't really matter which of these black inks you go for. They are all going to look damn good on the page, especially when you're not comparing them side by side with other inks. However, you must be fully cognizant of the troubles that you may have if you've got a fountain pen like my TWSBI that chucks out ink at one hell of a rate because it's got a really juicy 1.1mm stub. You will have problems. There's no way around it. You will have problems. On cheap paper, it basically suffers. Not only does it suffers all the way through to the next pages. So does that mean you shouldn't use a particularly juicy fountain pen in the office? No, of course not. However, what I would say is that this is not the ideal business professional style of pen. You're far better off with something like a fine or extra fine Conway Stewart, Pineda, whatever manufacturer you like. Go for a fine or a medium, and then you'll find that the potential difficulties reduce enormously. If you're in an office where you can have access to really good quality paper, such as William Hanna, you're certainly not going to get any problems anyway, because this paper will cope with anything you throw at it. Even Noodlers and platinum carbon black. They don't go through. They just stay neatly on the correct side of the page, as you would hope. So what I've done is I've reviewed all of those inks. I personally think that the two best ones for sketching are still going to be Noodlers, the Raven Evermore, and Platinum's Carbon. And I think I've got to do my finger test now. Waterman, definitely not waterproof. WH Smith's, not a chance. And I'm surprised, that's supposed to be a permanent black. Rural and Klingner, nope. Cross, nope. Visconti, nope. Diamine Jet Black, no. Diamine Quartz Black, no. Diamine Onyx Black, no. Lamy Obsidian, definitely no. And now we get to the interesting page. Iroshizuku, no. Dissolve. Noodlers, a bit, but far less. Platinum Carbon, well, that is the proof of the pudding, or the proof of the ink, is in the finger test. So Waterman's, no. What have we got? WH Smith, no. Royal and Klingner, no. Cross, no. Visconti, no. They all dissolved. Diamines, Jet Black, Quartz Black, Onyx Black, Lamy Obsidian, oh dear. Iroshizuku Takesumi, Noodlers, yeah, it still does a bit. That surprised me. Platinum Carbon Black, absolutely nothing whatsoever. So for watercolour, the most expensive ink out of all of this lot, but still the best. And what is interesting here, I've got to just show you this. So look at the, I said that the Leipziger Blau looked as though it had a blue tinge. Now, a little bit of a liquid on it, it goes blue. Look at this, the cross, definite sort of reddish tinge. Visconti, bit reddish. Diamine Jet Black, definitely blue. Quartz Black and onyx black. Quartz black seems to go more of a greyish colour, oddly enough. The onyx black definitely has more of a reddish tone. Lamy definitely has a blue tone. And Iroshizuku too is blue. Noodlers, it's smeared, but not enough for me to be able to tell what it was like. So there you go. If you want something that is definitely archival, water safe, carbon black is the best, but I would also say that Noodlers is damn close to it. In terms of all the other ones, it's a case of you pays your money, you makes your choice. I would say that Leipziger Schwarz is a gorgeous colour, and that is one that I'm going to be using probably before all of the others. If you want really solid black in an office environment, Diamine's Onyx Black, which is also the ink of choice with Conway Stewart, it has to be said. That is a lovely deep dark black. If you want to go for something slightly different, I can thoroughly recommend Obsidian from Lamy, whatever you want. Iroshizuku is lovely, but it's hellishly expensive. And for my money, if I'm going to go expensive, I'm going to stick to platinum. There you go. I hope that was interesting. If you're interested in the bits that I was writing out for all of these reviews, they all came from an excellent book. It's called The Piazza Murders by some chap called Jex, and highly recommended. It's getting very good reviews, and it's an ideal summer read for sitting on a beach in the heat. And if you want to support this channel, buying my books is a damn good way to do it. On the other hand, you can buy me a coffee, because I like my coffee as well as my tea. You can go to Patreon and support me there for as little as no money whatsoever, but you do get updates from me. You can also like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. They all help too. But apart from that, thanks a lot for watching. I hope that was interesting. Do let me know if you've got any questions. If you've got any inks that you'd like me to test, all you have to do is buy it yourself, and you can send me a sample, or you can send me a larger sample. I don't care which, but it is difficult for me to justify buying more inks while my wife eyes the several hundred bottles that I've already got. I like my marriage. I want to keep it. Thanks a lot for watching. Take care of yourself. Speak to you soon. Cheers.